wrapping up a series called Eyes to See today. We've been talking about looking beyond the physical to see the spiritual around us. Last week, I taught from John chapter 9, and we told this story of Jesus healing a blind man, but then it was the Pharisees that he says are blind. He says, you guys are the ones that are blind. You're blind to what God has done in your life. You're blind to what God is currently doing. You're blind to who God is. And we've asked God to give us eyes to see who he really is and what he's done. And today I really want to finish that thought. I want to carry that on with this idea of what we are to do once we have eyes to see what God has done. Once I have eyes to see what God has done, what should I respond with? How should I respond? And the answer to that, I believe, is to talk about having eyes to see our neighbors. How do we take it from what God has done in my life to what I believe God is going to do in your life? How do I take something great that was given to me and pay it forward to those around me? I want to finish by talking about how I think we tend to get blind to our neighbors. I grew up in this idyllic 1990s neighborhood. If you close your eyes and picture what a neighborhood was like in the early 90s, man, that's where I grew up. It was perfect. It was full of the kids that I went to school with, and they were everywhere, and we would just spend our days hanging out together. If you wanted to see the other kids in the neighborhood, let me tell you something right now, young people. We couldn't just tag them or ping them on our phones, okay? I couldn't go in to find my friends. No way. No, sir. If I wanted to find my friends after school, I jumped on my Huffy bicycle and I rode around the neighborhood until I found the front yard that was stocked full of other Huffy bicycles. And then you just threw yours in the pile and you walked through the door without saying anything, and somebody's mom that you'll never remember the name of offers you a snack. That's what it was like to grow up in the 1990s. We had a neighborhood pool. We would all go swim in it together. It was incredible. Or we would tell my mom, I was going to my friend Will's house, but instead there was a drainage ditch behind our neighborhood, and you could find megalodon teeth in there. And so there'd be all these 9-year-old kids just walking around in water that rises and falls, trying to find shark's teeth. And we found them. You better believe we did. We would go play Nintendo at each other's houses. We would show up all the time. For when I still remember their names. I'll never forget Will Floor was my best friend. Will Floor and I, we both lived on Brandywine Drive, and we were the kings of Brandywine Drive. Okay, John Paul lived just around the corner. Bobby Dunleavy lived around on a different street. Charlie, little KJ over on the corner. I remember my sister's friend Caroline Majonier lived 2 houses down, and her brother was super scary, terrifying. A teenager, I still don't know what he's up to, but I bet it's nothing good. We would cross the road into the neighborhood across the street to hang out with my friend John Edward Griffith. Everybody I knew had John and then another name right after. Will and I would spend hours at his house playing Sega Dreamcast, y'all. I would ride over there early on a Saturday morning because his mom would cook bacon on the stove. She'd fry it, but my mom cooked bacon in the microwave. My mom's an incredible cook. She didn't want her house to smell like bacon, okay? So I was at Will's house for breakfast, all right? I just remember neighbors like that. I think the world has changed a lot since then. The way that we view our neighbors, the way that we grow up, the way that people operate around us is different now. I also think that I've changed a lot since then. I don't think it's just the cultural shifts. I think it's just growing up. When Rael and I lived in the Bay Area of California, we lived there for a few years before we moved here. The whole time we lived there, we lived in the same apartment. We were in this apartment complex with 546 units. That is a lot of neighbors. 3 years in the same apartment. I never learned a single name of any of them. Robert told me this morning, don't tell people that. Can I be honest? I don't think I was a bad neighbor. I just didn't think about it. We were busy in that season. Really busy. I was working on my master's degree online. I was still in the Coast Guard. Worked on a maritime security team as a range instructor and a boarding team member. I was the student director and a church planning apprentice for a church. My schedule was packed. Rael was working at REI and took as many hours as they would give her, and she was also serving church alongside me. We both took Saturday off most of the time, but we would spend the whole day off in Tahoe skiing or in Yosemite hiking or on some other Bay Area adventure. When did we have time for our neighbors? When were we supposed to meet a bunch of strangers and get to know them? How were we going to do that? I can still remember the names of my neighbors from 30 years ago. I can't remember a single one from 10 years ago. Maybe that's how you feel. I get it. I've lived it. Here's what I believe. Whether it's a cultural shift that's made it harder for us to connect with people because we're so connected online, or maybe it's a natural busyness that's taken over our lives. I do think the culture has gotten busier than ever, louder than ever. I think the world around you is competing for your attention at a faster pace than at any other time in human history. I think all of that is happening. I think it is happening. I also don't think we were made to live this way. I think that we're seeing suicide, depression, and loneliness skyrocketing in the world around us right now because we weren't made to live this way. Being connected to someone across a screen is never going to be the same as being connected to someone across a table. We were made to know our neighbors. And beyond that, the Bible teaches that we were made to love our neighbors. When we moved here 10 years ago, we knew that this had to change. I remember I was very connected at church, had a lot of friends in the Coast Guard. I remember feeling this emptiness at home. I needed to know these people. We moved into our house. Our first house here was in West Asheville. We were literally, I looked across my front porch into Gross Funeral Home. That was a weird thing, you guys, looking into a funeral home every day from my porch. Honestly, it taught me a lot about life, watching how people go, who shows up, what kind of people come, what it's like at the end. Anyway, I could go all day on that. But we lived over there, and it's called Lucerne Park, the neighborhood that we lived in. And we moved into that neighborhood. We immediately started throwing block parties. I remember thinking, nobody wants a block party in the year of our Lord, 2015. But we're going to try it. It was this massive success. It was this big thing that continued on year after year. We would just learn the names of our neighbors, get to know them a little bit. We shared a driveway with one neighbor, so we were like, we need to know who you are so we can text you to move your car at some times. We decided that our lives were going to be, one of the big things within them was going to be, we have to be good neighbors. In our home now, we know our neighbors. We have a real relationship with our neighbors. We share meals together. We laugh together. We take care of each other. We share our lives as much as we can. Why? Because I believe that as followers of Jesus, there is a call on my life to love my neighbors. Case in point is this great story in Luke chapter 10. You've probably heard it before. Let's look at it, verse 5. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus is out there doing some crowd work. Okay, he's talking to the people, answering questions, doing a little Q&A. And he'd been talking about different things related to the kingdom of heaven. And one of the big common themes in the teaching of Jesus was he wanted to help people understand what is the kingdom of heaven like. What are the things that matter to God, that are important to God? Because these are the things that need to matter to me and be important to me. What's written in the law? Jesus said. How do you read it? And he answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. You've answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus a question. This is the most crucial sentence in this passage. Because here's the thing. This answer that the man gives Jesus was an answer any Jewish person would know, would still know. Came from a prayer. It was in Deuteronomy. It's a commandment of God. It says, love the Lord your God and then love your neighbor. All that's very important. They would recite it every Sabbath. They knew that this was kind of the key to the law and the prophets. Jesus said, all of the law and the prophets hang on these commands. Love the Lord your God with your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So when this man says, how am I supposed to get into heaven? He knows that Jesus should answer with this. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. But then look at verse 29. He wanted to justify himself. Because I think we all just want to justify ourselves. So many of us aren't asking the question, what does God require of me? Most of us are asking the question, how much is enough? What's the bare minimum out of all of this that I can do and still go to heaven? Very interested in heaven. Want to do that. Don't want to go to hell. Went to a Baptist church one time. Told me all about it. Horrifying. Not interested. But what's the minimum? Where's the line? Because I operate great if you just give me like a boundary. If you just tell me how much or how little to do. One of the constant arguments, if I could be honest, that my wife and I have is I want her to define the boundary. If she's asked me to do a project, when can I stop doing the project? How much paint is going to be enough on this piece of furniture? If you ask me to clean the kitchen, define clean. What do I need to do? To me, I'm going to put the pots away and we're clean. She wants me to get out the 409, okay? Define it for me. I want to do the bare minimum. That's what's happening here. He wanted to justify himself. He probably wasn't a bad guy. He just wanted to know, what's the minimum that I have to do in order to consider myself loving? Who is my neighbor? Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers, and they stripped him of his clothes. They beat him. They went away, and they left him half dead. And a priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him, he bandaged his wounds, poured on oil and wine, was marinating this guy. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave him to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I'll reimburse you for any extra expenses you have. So then Jesus asks, which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell in the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied begrudgingly and through his teeth, the one who had mercy on him. And so Jesus said, go and do likewise. It's one of the most familiar stories in the Bible. People that don't even go to church know this one. It's a cultural colloquialism in our world for when somebody does something kind for a stranger. They were a good Samaritan. You'll watch the news. A good Samaritan stopped to respond to an accident down on 191 today. We know about it. But it's more than a story about a random act of kindness. It's a shrewd answer to a very shrewd question. A man was trying to justify himself and said, who is my neighbor? Jesus is teaching something crucial. This is what it actually looks like to love your neighbor well. In the story, the man who was robbed is just a person in need. Could be someone across the street, could be someone across town. Doesn't matter. Here comes 3 people who will have direct contact with him, and each person has to make a choice. First guy is a priest. He's got a collar on. He's carrying a giant King James Bible. He goes walking by the guy. He sees him. He crosses the street, walks on the other side. The next guy is a Levite. A Levite was from a Jewish tribe of people that worked in the synagogue or in the temple. This was a guy who works at a church. Walks by and he sees the man and he crosses the street and he walks on the other side. The next person is a Samaritan. Now, if you don't know, Samaritans come from a region that adjoins Judea called Samaria. They were half Jewish in heritage and considered very other. Ultimately, they believed in the same God, but they believed very differently about that God, about where to worship that God, how to worship that God, what that God was going to do in the end times. And so the Jewish people hated the Samaritan people. They hated them for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is because they were half Jewish. They hated them racially. They hated them culturally. They hated that they were so close to Jerusalem. They hated them geographically. They just didn't like these people. They were considered an immoral, bad group of people to any good Jewish person. And in this moment, Jesus chooses someone that most of these people would consider irredeemable to be the hero of the story. That was very intentional. He tells them, go and act like the Samaritan, which would have been pretty insulting to the people listening. But Jesus just needed them to hear it. I don't care who it is. If you're there, if you see someone, don't love them with your words. Love them with your actions. Love people by loving people. Most of us know this story, but very few of us live out its message. This isn't just a message about random acts of kindness. It's about who I am meant to be and how I am meant to live as a follower of Christ. It's about living in such a way that you consistently meet the need that is in front of you. Love the people around you. Love your neighbor and serve them. 3 big things that I would take away from this. First, we've got to have eyes to see beyond ourselves. We live in a time where it's really easy to paint religious leaders as the bad guy. We've all seen enough headlines about corrupt priests and pastors in the last 20 years that it's easy to imagine this priest and this Levite as the righteous gemstones, right? Walking through. To imagine these guys, they were corrupt, they were evil. This is Jesus saying the whole system is a problem. I don't think Jesus chose a priest as a way of saying that the priests are a problem. I think Jesus chose a priest to say this kind of complacency can happen to anybody. That even if somebody that we hold to the highest standard can have this level of complacency in their life, so can anybody. So can I, so can you. And so the problem with these two, the Levite and the priest, isn't that they were corrupt, it's that they didn't stop. I wonder if you've ever driven past somebody in need and done everything you could to avoid eye contact. I wonder if you've ever known that your neighbor was having a hard time and you just walked by on the other side of the street. Ever heard that a friend or an acquaintance or a church member was going through a hard season, could use some help, and you just avoided eye contact? I don't think that all of that makes you a bad person. I want you to feel the weight of it. I'm not here to guilt you today. I don't think that we do those things because of some inherent corruption in our hearts. Maybe not. I don't think we're out there laughing about the pain that people go through. I think that a lot of times we just have a lot going on ourselves right now. We're already pretty loaded down. We're busy. We've got a lot of obligations. Maybe, worse yet, you're just comfortable. You've got your schedule, your routine, your life is pretty good. You don't want to disrupt the balance. It's understandable. I've been there. But it's just not how we were made to live. See, if you want to know how to feel satisfied, have peace and joy in your heart, you need to look no farther than the Scripture. This is the book given to you by the one who made you. If you want to have peace in your heart, you must live the way the one who designed your heart has called you to live. And when I study the Gospels, I can find nothing in them that tells me I should have a comfortable life. In fact, it's the opposite. I should consistently and constantly put my comfort aside to serve the world and the people around me. This priest and this Levite, they probably just had a lot of obligations. Somewhere to be, an appointment to make. Life was busy. Can't afford to stop right now. Matthew 16:24, Jesus says, if anyone wants to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Deny yourself means stop living for yourself. Eyes up to see the world around you. Stop fighting for your own comfort. Be willing to be uncomfortable. Be willing to give up your own personal freedom, your time, your energy, even your money. Less of me, more of Christ. Paul puts it this way: do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. I'm not just trying to get in your business today. I want something for you. I want you to have the satisfaction that can only come from living the way you were created to live. You were made to serve. The enemy wants you to think that you're made to serve only yourself, but there's no peace or satisfaction in that. Have you ever watched a celebrity documentary? I love to watch them because I've never seen one that didn't validate my worldview. Elvis Presley, Tom Brady, Zac Efron's got a good one. There's a Taylor Swift documentary. All these people who reached the pinnacle of what we think it is to be human. They got all the money, the fame, the accolades, the awards. Everybody agrees what they're doing is awesome. And then you watch them on this documentary, and for an hour and a half, they're telling the interviewer about how empty they are, or how it's not enough, or about how they just thought it would feel different to get here. They're so lonely. One of my favorites is a Tom Brady one, where he's got like 7 Super Bowl rings, and he says, I thought that if I got 1 ring, it would be enough. And now I have 7, and I'm still trying to figure out, when is it going to be enough? The end of his career proved that he was still feeling that. Sociologists look at something called the hierarchy of needs. It was published in 1943 by a famous psychologist named Abraham Maslow. Maslow suggested that all human behavior is explained by these specific needs: physiological needs, safety needs, love and belonging, esteem, and then at the very top, the thing that drives everything else, self-actualization. Maslow believed that if I could actually know myself, know who I am, why I am, all these things, then I've met my deepest need and I'll be satisfied. 20 years later, after studying this more and more, he realized that's not enough. Knowing myself isn't actually our top need as humans. And so in the 1960s, Maslow added a new top level, and it was transcendence. In other words, I need to know myself and then use that knowledge to serve others. He could have saved himself a whole lot of research by reading Galatians 5:13. You were called to freedom, brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, as an opportunity to serve yourself, to make your name great, just to bask in all the good things about you. Use your freedom through love to serve one another. Have eyes to see beyond yourself and serve your neighbor. Learning to live that way is our goal, to serve the needs of others. Can I tell you that an easy on-ramp for this, if serving people is new, there's no shame in it. We are constantly told by society and by the enemy that we were made to serve ourselves. It's hard to figure out a way to serve others. And a lot of times when we finally get convicted by the Spirit to do it, we do too much and we burn out immediately. We're like, well, that didn't work. Can I just offer an easy on-ramp? Join the dream team. Join us here at the Gathering Church. We're meeting spiritual needs every Sunday. We're doing everything that we can to change the heart of this city. And you can be a part of it. I don't know that I believe that, serving coffee is your purpose in life and it's going to fulfill every need or desire you ever had. I'm not saying that. It could. Maybe you're the best barista who ever lived. But probably what's going to happen is when you begin to serve coffee, God's going to say, yep, I created you to serve people. And you start to connect the dots and a bigger purpose wakes up inside of you. Second thing is this. Oh boy. Build bridges. Build bridges. Number 2, build bridges. We are called by God to be good neighbors. But it can be hard. I wonder if you've ever felt nervous for like your coworkers or neighbors to find out you're a Christian and you go to church living here in Asheville. I have. I get asked all the time what I do for work. And I'm like, ooh, you're going to think they're going to act so weird when I tell them this. And people do always act weird when you tell them you're a pastor. They usually respond by either telling you about every issue going on in their life right now, or they treat you like you've just told them, oh yes, don't mind my cough, I have COVID. It can be hard. But when we're in a culture like this that has a preconceived notion of what a Christian is, it can be even harder. I believe that we are called to stand firm in the truth of God and His Word. And sometimes that will be uncomfortable for people who disagree. That's okay. But we have to love our neighbors. Not just in word, but in deed. And if we lived the way that Jesus taught us to live, we would be the best neighbors in any neighborhood. It would get harder and harder for the people around us to believe the reputation that Christians have any longer. We got to get better at building bridges to the neighbors next door and across the street and across town. We just have to find a common ground in order to expose them to the gospel. Hear me correctly. I want you to build relationships with as many people as possible for the sole purpose of unity to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And it's not to say that you're using people. It's to say that you need to know people so that they can know Jesus. And that's the most important thing you can do for somebody else. And it really just starts by building bridges. Here's a great story. John chapter 4, there's another Samaritan. This time, Jesus and his disciples are on their way to Jerusalem. Most Jews go all the way around Samaria, take an extra day of walking just to get to Jerusalem. Jesus says, we're not doing that. We're going straight through the mess because that's what he does. And he gets to this place where there's a well, and it's about noon. And so he sits on the well to rest, sends his disciples into the village to go buy some lunch. And he's sitting there at this well, and this woman approaches, a Samaritan woman. It was normal to get water in the morning. She is coming at noon because she does not want to run into anybody else. Her life is a mess. She wants to not be noticed. And Jesus notices her, because that's what he does. He opens a conversation with her when most people would have just ignored her. That's what he does. And they start talking. Jesus asks her for a drink of water, and she offers him that drink of water. And they start talking specifically about water. And Jesus uses this thing, water, which is the literal only thing they have in common at this moment. And he uses the water that they're drinking to expose her to the gospel message. He says to her, hey, guess what? I can offer you water that will make sure you are never thirsty again. And she's interested. And then she finds out he knows all of her secrets, all of the worst things about her, and he is still interested. He's still talking to her. He's still trying to know her. She runs into the town, tells everybody, you got to come see this guy. Just told me everything that there was to know about my whole life. And the people come out, and most of this city, this village, is exposed to the gospel on this day. Many end up getting saved because Jesus built a bridge, and then this woman crossed right over it. You don't have to have a whole lot in common with people to build a bridge with them. It could just be water. This is good water, right? Do you like water? I sure do. Did you know that Jesus is living water? Maybe don't do it just like that. Drop that. Do a different idea. I'm just saying that all you have to do is find common ground. Build a bridge. Just ask some questions. Look for a thread. It can be the smallest one of something that you have in common, and start a conversation. Get to know somebody, even just a little bit. Serve somebody. If you have some neighbors that struggle with mobility, or some elderly neighbors, you see them carrying in their groceries, offer to help. If it's a snowy day, say, hey man, I just shoveled my driveway. Can I shovel yours? The once every 5 years that's a problem. You get the idea. Most of us did this right after the storm. We couldn't go anywhere or text anyone, and so we immediately started serving our neighbors. It's amazing. It doesn't have to be the biggest natural disaster our area has ever seen for you to step out and start serving your neighbors. An act of service, an act of kindness, a conversation, all so that you can build a bridge and see what happens next. And what happens next, number 3, just love your neighbor. Love your neighbor. Whether it's the guy next door or the guy begging on the corner, every Christian has a mandate on their life to fulfill what we call the Great Commission. Jesus was constantly telling us to love people. It's because of the way that he loves people. He loves them so much, it says that he came in the world to save the world, not to condemn us, but to offer us everlasting life. The way that he loves people is demonstrated on the cross and in the resurrection. And our main call in this life, we call it the Great Commission, is just to expose people to the love of Jesus. And the best way that we can expose people to the love of Jesus is to love them. May they see Jesus in you, because may your actions reflect the actions of Christ. Love your neighbors. Do it in a tangible way. Get to know them. Find an opportunity to hear their story. Invite them over for dinner. Talk to them. Tell them about your life as they tell you about yours. One of my favorite stories about building bridges and how that can lead to a gospel conversation was, I was in the Coast Guard and there was this guy named Jacob. Jacob and I could not have been more different. I mean, genuinely, the only thing that we really did have in common was water. I mean, look, we're on a boat. There's water, right? Yeah, I see that water. Boy, salty, isn't it? Yeah, real salty. Okay. Jacob grew up on the streets for most of his life. His parents abandoned him and his brother when they were young. When he was 17 years old, his brother forged a form for him to join the Coast Guard so that he would have somewhere to live and eat and sleep at night. And it turned Jacob mean. He was grumpy. He had a face like a pit bull. He was scary looking. He was aggressive anytime we were doing our job. He was an intimidating person. And I remember I would walk into work and I would always just look him in the eye and say, "Hey, Jacob, how you doing?" Grab my coffee and ask him how his day had been going, how his week was, what he was feeling. He had kids that lived in a different state that he didn't see. I would ask him about his kids. I would try to remember their names, which is super hard for me. I'm the worst name person ever. Eventually, about a year into knowing each other, one day Jacob asked me if we could go to lunch together. And I said, "Well, this is it. I'm going to die at lunch today. About to get slain at an In-N-Out. I've asked him too many questions. I know too much." "Sure, man. Yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to." So we go and we sit down at an In-N-Out burger. And he says, "Hey, man, what's your deal?" It's like, "I don't know. You tell me. I'm very scared right now." And he says, why do you always ask me, why are you so nice to me? I've never been nice to you. Why do you let people bully you the way they do and you just take it on the chin? How come you always seem happy? I was like, okay, well, I'm not always happy. I'm kind of a grumpy person. Why do you have that joy? "John Mark, I'm falling apart and I'm trying to find a reason to keep living. And I can't figure it out, man. My life's a mess. Everybody hates me. I hate me. What do I do?" I just remember looking at him and saying, "Man, Jacob, I've been there. Dude, I've hated me. I've hated me." I remember thinking, what's the purpose of my life? I remember thinking all I did was make a mess anywhere. I've been there. I've been where you are. Can I tell you what made all the difference? Jesus entered my life. And when he entered my life, I was different. And I had a hope that I couldn't explain. And I had to do a lot of work. And you know who helped me do the work? The church, man. You got to come to church with me. Dude, you can have this kind of hope today, Jacob. I remember we sat in his Ford Escape, which was way too small of a car for such a big guy. And he prayed to come into a relationship with Jesus right there in that car. It was great. He came to church with me that Sunday. He joined the dream team. He started serving in the nursery holding babies. And I was just like, "Hey, Pastor, you might want to do a background check. I brought him here. I'm not vouching for it." Okay? Jacob was my neighbor. I didn't know that we had anything in common or ever would, but I just tried to love him. I don't think I always did a great job of it, but God used it. And I just wonder who's in your life right now waiting for you to love them. I wonder who's going to hit that day where everything feels like it's crushing in on them. And maybe they'll remember that they do have somebody at work or next door that's always been so kind to them. Somebody that might listen. Maybe they'll remember that time you had a weird conversation about water. And think, man, that guy really tried hard to get to know me. Maybe I should talk to him. It says in 1 John chapter 3, this is how we know what love is. Jesus laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or a sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech,
if it would sound any better. You want to try?
actions and truth. It is not enough to say, I love my neighbors. You have to walk out these doors and go and love your neighbors. And when you do, not only will their lives change, not only could their eternities change, yours will as well. You'll find greater peace and satisfaction in places you never knew that you could find it. I would offer you a next step. Write some names down. Put down the top 3 people that you interact with that are your neighbors. Right? Who is my neighbor at the top, and a few names. Have a conversation with them. Get to know them. Build a bridge. Invite them to church. Invite them to Gather Fest. Show them love as you have been shown love. God has changed and transformed my life. I was dead and now I'm alive again. God, I've got eyes to see what you've done for me. Now give me eyes to see my neighbors that you might do the same for them. I have to tell people because of what's happened in my life. I have to. We have to. If you're in here today and you don't have a relationship with Jesus, maybe you've been wondering, when are my neighbors going to love me? I hope that here in this place you felt that kind of love. I hope that you will continue to. And I want to give you the opportunity to step into a relationship with Jesus so that you could experience a brand new kind of love, a new kind of hope, new kind of possibility for your life. He's been waiting your whole life for a moment like this to enter into a relationship with you. If you're ready to do that, every head bowed, every eye closed, pray this prayer with me. Heavenly Father, forgive me for my sin. Forgive me for making it about me. I believe in you. I believe in your death on the cross. I believe in your resurrection. I believe in your great love for me. And so all that I am from this day on, I will follow you.